my research is about the relationship between children's problem behaviors and their spatial working memory. So spatial working memory is the cognitive ability to deal with spatial visual information, and children's problem behaviors are commonly grouped into internalizing behaviors such as depression, anxiety, and externalizing behaviors such as conduct problems and hyperactivity, known as ADHD, for example. These problem behaviors are associated with children's poor cognitive outcomes in general. However, its relationship with spatial working memory in specific is unclear. There are some research, but the studies are quite limited. The samples were selective and small, and also the results were very mixing. So that led to my first research question, which was to find out the relationship between children's problem behaviors and their spatial working memory ability when they were older, for example. And if there is a link, then I would be interested to know, if there is a link, given that spatial working memory and children's problem behaviors are both related to children's academic performance, and academic performance is more like a daily concept compared to the working memory. So I am interested to know whether a spatial working memory explains the impact of children's problem behaviors onto their academic performance. And at the same time, if the link exists, I'd like to know what are the implications for educational psychology professionals, including EPs, training EPs, assistant EPs, and independent EPs. So for the third research question, I used an online survey, anonymous online survey, and I collected 49 responses. For the first and second research questions, I used secondary analysis of the data from the Millennium Cohort Study, which follows children when they were in the age of 9 months until now. They are still following those students. But the data I used were from the questionnaires completed by man carers, parents, for example, when their children were at the ages of 3, 5, 7, 11 years old. And these questionnaires included the SDQ, the Strengths Difficulties Questionnaire. And when the children were at the age of 11, the teachers were asked to give ratings on children's academic ability in science, math, and English. At the same time, these children at age 11 were assessed by the Cambridge Neuropsychological Test Automated Battery, the CANTAB, which is the measure for spatial working memory. So it's the same test, but within that test, there are different measures. There are 2 measures for spatial working memory. So I want you to imagine you are doing the test. Looking at the screen, there are 6 boxes. You need to find a token behind the boxes, and the token is behind one of those boxes. And then you click, and you find the token, then you drag the token to the column at the side. Then a new search starts. And when a new search starts, and the token will be behind the other, in this case, other 5 boxes. When you find all 6 tokens, a new trial will start with different colors, different positions for those boxes. So for the first measure for spatial working memory, it's called total errors. Within one trial, if you click on the box which contained the token before, you made an error. Within one search, if you clicked on the box which was found empty before, you made an error. The more errors you make, that suggests poorer spatial working memory. The second measure was spatial working memory strategy. So it is believed that the most efficient way to complete this task is you make a plan about what is the order of clicking the boxes, and you stick to that order. The more randomly you're clicking the boxes, the higher score you're going to get for strategy. That means poorer spatial working memory. Okay, now if you still remember, with the SDQ questionnaire data they collected at 4 different time points, I did an analysis called a group-based trajectory modeling using Spatial. So across 3 domains of children's problem behaviors, internalizing behaviors, conduct problems, and hyperactivity, inattention, the children, the same group of children, the same population was grouped into 4 different trajectory groups. Across 3 domains, there is a high-risk group. So for children in that high-risk group, the orange color, so in that high-risk group, the prevalence for problem behaviors were between 60% to 100% across all 4 time points tested. At the same time, there is always a group with the lowest average risk in general. That is the group usually at the bottom. And usually most children were assigned to this group. And I used these groups with the lowest average risk as the reference group in my regression modeling. So the regression modeling results answered my first and second research questions. First, did childhood problem behaviors predict spatial working memory at age 11? In general, yes, it did. But if you look at the results, it compares the other groups with the reference group, whether there is a significant group difference in spatial working memory. For internalizing behaviors, for children with internalizing behaviors, yes, it did, but only when spatial working memory was measured by total errors. So just about memorizing the position of those boxes. However, it's not the case when spatial working memory was measured by strategy. So when making plan was involved, it's like executive functioning skills was involved. However, for externalizing behaviors, especially for hyperactivity, inattention, it is the case, no matter, regardless of which measure was taken. Now, my second research question, whether there is a pathway, for example, children's high level of problem behaviors linked with children's poorer spatial working memory, in turn, both predict poorer academic result. Yes, it did in general. And it's actually consistent with the previous result pattern. So externalizing behaviors, especially hyperactivity, inattention, this result was found more consistently. With the survey data, over 65% of EPs, they believed this link to some extent. And interestingly, those EPs who reported they had more experiences with cases of externalizing behaviors, they believed this link more. And there are some key points about implications. For example, the impact, such link will impact different areas of practice, including intervention, hypothesis formulation, and assessment. And they feel like this link helps them to understand children's behavior presentations. And they feel like this link can be cross-referred to some existing knowledge around the trauma and cognitive functioning. So I feel like the pattern I found about the externalizing behaviors, especially ADHD, are more consistently linked with children's problem behaviors. It's actually consistent with previous research. We may wonder why there is a link. So I think we can explain from two different perspectives. The first is neuroscience. So for example, dysregulated dopamine and cortisol levels, they are associated with both. So maybe that's the common cause behind both, or maybe there is a causal relationship among the three. And from some cognitive psychological theories perspective, for example, working memory model, as a human being, we have limited cognitive capacity. That means we can only attend to a certain amount of information at any given one time. So if we are prone to anxiety, we're being hyper vigilant, we cannot pay attention, that means less capacity will be allocated to any cognitive task, including spatial working memory tasks. Okay, there are many strengths. I think the main one is, this is the first one looking into the specific relationship between children's problem behaviors and spatial working memory. And it has a large sample size, 12,589 children or in the sample. There are other strengths as well, you can have a look. And the limitation, however, is given the research design and data available, this study cannot determine whether the relationship is causal, and if so, in which direction. And that will be a suggestion for future research.